I want to hear you guys' voice. I want to hear you guys' voice. Hello, guys. I want to hear you guys' voice. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So before we continue, we are not much for now. So let's introduce ourselves. Where are you joining me? Where are you joining the call from? How has been the class so far? Quickly, because we have a lot to talk about today. So can you guys go around? Where are you joining from? Which country? And how has been the class so far? Hello, as you join, like quick one, like to know where you're joining us from and how has been the class so far. If you cannot talk, you can drop a chat. But let's do that quickly in the next 2 minutes. Just to know how have you guys been doing? How's the class? Are you enjoying it? And where are you joining us from? Quick one. You guys are talking? Nadine? Bellamy? Oh, nice. You're enjoying from Kenya. Great. Locked in from Kenya. That's very interesting. Nice to have you from Rwanda and from Kenya. Oh, great. How's been the class so far? I want to hear feedback from everybody. If you can't talk, drop a chat. If I continue. You're great, Nadine. So how have been the class so far? How you guys doing? Hope you guys enjoying the class. I just hear one. I would need just 2 contributions. Talk, unmute your mic and talk. How has been the class? I want you guys to unmute and tell us how has been the class quickly before we just continue, guys. Who wants to give me just 2? I just need 2 feedback. A guy and a lady. How has been the class so far? This is the 4th week, so I need to just get feedback. Who's talking? Someone should mute now. You guys are enjoying me. I'm begging, right? Since you guys want to mute your mic, why? I want you to get feedback from you guys how the class has been. Hi, Omar. Welcome from Rwanda. Who wants to save the class today? How has been the class? So if I just need 1 comment from you guys. Should I pick 1 person? Okay, so Immaculate and Ome. Can you guys unmute? And maybe Immaculate can go first. How have been the class? What have you gained so far? Do you think it makes sense? Quick one, just 1 minute, please, guys.
Hello, everyone. I'm Immaculate. So far, so good. I'm learning and understanding most of the concepts. So, yeah.
Tell me 1 concept that you've been enjoying and what you plan to take out of this class. You plan to be a backend engineer for this program. What are you looking out for?
Yeah. I have skills like before joining the program, I had skills in front end. So for this program, after gaining the skills in Django and everything, I'm planning to be a full stack engineer.
Oh, great. Thanks so much. Wow, that's a great one.
Okay.
So, and has the program been helpful for you?
Yes, it has been. The program has been very helpful. I'm understanding most of the concepts because they're elaborated clearly and well. So yeah, I'm grateful.
All right. Okay, 1 person who's going next. Omer, over to you. How's been the program? Unmute your mic. Somebody doesn't want to talk. Bellamy, can you talk? Okay, so since you guys refuse to talk, no problem, but please, I want this class to be interactive. If you have any questions, any concern, feel free to ask me questions. Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, noisy place. So guys, feel free to ask me a question, unmute and say, hey, I don't understand what's going on. So I'm Sunday Ajayi, right? You guys might know very soon, but yeah, I'm Sunday Ajayi, backend engineer. I'm also a graduate student at Carnegie Mellon. And also on the Python Rwanda community lead. We're excited to see that you guys are actually enjoying the program. And yeah, so I'll be going straight into what we're having conversation on. But please, guys, if you have issues on what we are teaching, maybe it's not clear, be like, guys, I need extra help. Feel free to drop a message, contact any of the admins, last name. Right? And then you save it as name. When you do this like this, what you're going to do another restriction. You can answer, okay, you don't allow space, you don't allow character. You can restrict this, okay, only names, no number, just alphabet I want in for this field. So in that case, which I'm going to demonstrate right now. So let me give an example right now. I'll comment this out. I'll let this. Now, I hope this is up to 100. Let me just put, and she's and she likes pink and black. I hope this is more than 100 characters. So let me try to save this. Boom. What can you see the error? Ensure the field has no more than 100 characters. Now, this error is by default, and that's one of the beauty of Django. Django handles some level of abstraction. Like because you said this here, automatically it will get this. But what happened here is that it went into, see, which is not a good design, right? Because it left this level, left this level, and came down here. Whether I could have stopped it here. Let me now show you how we can stop it here. Now, can you see this validate name? Right? Let me try something and show. Good. Let me test something for you guys here. Spam. Let me test something here for you guys now, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So let me change this serializer I'm using here. I'm pointing to, I'll just show an example and what am I using now? Items, okay. So let me go to items view sets and I'll change this to this. Right. And let me go here and put this. And let me refresh this. Name cannot contain the word spam. Now, this validation did not get to the database. You can see here, let me go to Serializer. We had came here and validated this to say, if you see any word called spam, stop it. Now, the beauty of this is the fact that when you have something like this, for instance, right, these are like different properties in Serializer you can use. So because I have the word, so my model, right? So let me just start from the basis, right? When you're trying to write a serializer, one, you use the serializer class from REST Framework. REST Framework is a framework for building backend. One of Django's framework, which popular REST Framework. So yeah, by default, This we handle. This is like the model view set, the generic way of writing it, the default way of writing this. Where you define the name of your model, and then tell it that yes, I need all the fields to be sent to the front end. That way. So imagine I don't want to have this. I only want to have the name to be showing, right? Let me go back to the previous validation. I switch it back to this one. So let me say I just want the name alone, right? If I refresh, I'm only going to see name, meaning front end, all I want you to send to me is name. So if I want you to send me name, the only time we tell you to send back to me should just be name, not everything. And that's the joy of this. This is where you said that to say, these are the fields. These are the fields I want. But if you don't want to do that, right, you can say the all that I used previously. All means return everything. I will like return all the fields to return all the fields back. If you want to customize the field, sometimes I have like 20 fields. For instance, now I mentioned something about first name, last name, if you remember, right? If I want to collect first name and last name, but it's not saying to my dear, I just want the user to see first name and last name, I can customize it to say, okay, rather, I just want you to return the first name and last name. I'll be done to populate the other names I want. I can do that here. And how do I do that for you? I can do that here, right? So there are different ways of doing. By default, if you want to build a website, for instance, I want to build a Serializer. If you use the model view set automatically listens to your model and leverage on all these things in your model. So it uses what is in your model to work. Automatically, you might not, with this, you can serialize the basic properties of your model. So what it does with this basic one is it will check your model. Are there any restrictions on your model? Yes, you said this guy should be text field. This guy should be sharp field. Then this is the basic value authentication or verification is going to do. But you want to do something advanced, for instance, like I mentioned, add more field, but you don't want it to be in database. There are things they call serialized method field, whereby you can set custom field you want and then set the behavior. So one thing about serializers, when you had something to read, for instance, like I mentioned, first name, right? First name, last name, for instance. Let me remove this source for now. I don't need the source. And I use something, the method serializers here, right? What happens here is the fact that I could I could receive that name, for instance, or let me just do something better here. Yeah. Then when you had a custom variable here, you expect to add it to the side yourself. Manually add it yourself to the list of the fields you're expecting. Now, when I do this like this now, right? Note that the serializer you're going to use should match what you have in your view. So if I'm going to use the advanced, which is this, it has to match. Now, having done this now, if I refresh my page now, boom, I'm going to have this. But wait, I don't want name to show. I only want to see first name, last name, right? So I can decide to go to my serializer and check, why is this name showing? I check, oh, name is in this list. I can remove the name here. If I save it again, right, and I go here and refresh, the name is gone. Now, what I want to do, now I can create another name, call it, I can now decide to, okay, let's assume, for instance, now that I want to save this, get the first and get the last and save it to my, and join it together to save it to my DB. How do I do that, right? So this is where you can do this orchestration, validate the name, do a lot of things. You're expecting the date time, validate what you are receiving. Right? So these are a lot of things you do when it comes to serialization, right? Let me try to just demo the last part I mentioned. So give, for instance, now, if mentioned, I added the name. I've added the name for it, and I say, this name, so I want it. This name, I want it to show, but I only want it to be a read only, meaning when I'm posting, it shouldn't show, right? I can add something called the read only property and say, okay, for now, right, the name should be read only, meaning I want to use it to read data, right? If I go to this place now, it's no longer here, even though its name is listed here. So the metadata helps us to coordinate the data. So what that means is I've told it all the fields I need, but yet I've told some of the fields are read only, meaning ID, for instance, should read only. You shouldn't be telling the user to give the ID of what you're selling to your model. This created is automatic. You shouldn't tell it to tell you that, right? So you know what you want, you can set it. Now, I haven't done this for instance now. I need to save this name to a DB. What do I do, for instance? I can decide to say, I can decide to do what get name, for instance, right? And when I'm getting name, I can decide to say what I want it to do, right? Is to name is equals to tell to excuse me, tell you to do what? Concatenate the first name plus last name and return the variable code name. Period. And this is what's now going to save to the DB. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Your get name method, should it have an object parameter?
Can you say that again?
The method that you just created, get name.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the use of the second parameter, the object parameter?
Which one? This one?
Yeah.
So so this is the object. Okay, let me print it out. So you can also see what the object. So this is the object that we hold the full payloads coming in, everything coming in when you're sending. So note what I'm printing out here. Let me just make it this way. Yeah. Let me print it out so we can test and see ourselves how it works. Training. So the object parameter is the object that returns all this, everything I'm returning back. Right. Dev. Let me call it, say xn dev. Good. Yeah. So let me now see what the error is. I think got an unexpected first and the last one. So let's go back and see so I can fix the error. So on the log now, let me show you. Let me show you where the error is coming from. If I won't show you the error, let me go back and see if I can show you the log I wanted to show you. If it shows. What serializer did I use here? Maybe advanced serializer, yeah. Where is it again? Side effects of troubleshooting this thing underscore. So we'll see it together. Oh, sorry, guys. Let me see. Is it better now? Is it better now, guys? Okay, yeah, sorry about that. So, go where this errors. So continue from there. Yeah, Dev, continue.
Can you show us the item class?
The
Model.
item, the model, yeah, this is the model. So the item model
Yeah,
doesn't
because
have,
it says
yeah,
it says that the item does not have the first name and last name attribute.
yes, yes. So what we are trying to do here is, so that's what we are trying to do here is, what we are trying to do here is to kind of augment the data you're receiving. So augment data you're receiving and then use it to I'll elaborate now. Augment data you're trying to receive and then use it to work on data you need to do. So let me quickly do this and come in. So that's what we're trying to do was how do we control people from just putting name? So you can either modify your model and say first name and last name. What if they don't want you to say first name and last name in their model, just one name? How do you do that? You can collect first name and last name, and then your serializer, you treat the data. When you treat the data, you now save the name instead of saving the first name and last name. Let me try to see if I can fix this. Let me see if I can fix this. Fix this quickly. Okay, yeah, sorry. Should I do it here or should I just leave it? Wait, let me first show you what I'm trying to show you if I continue. Yeah, let me first show you what I'm trying to show you and yeah. So let me first show you what I'm trying to show you. Now I've removed this, hold on. Where is it again? Yeah, let me first log this guy for you so you can see. Let me first log this guy for you so you can see. Did I log? Trying to show you the object. Good. So I can log this object so you. Oh, let's. Oh, wait. Let me not do this here. So I don't. Let me not do this here for now. So I'll come back to this quickly. Let me not do this here for now. So I'll come back to this when I'm explaining here. When I explain the other validation. So there's another model I was supposed to use to do this, which is the normal custom serializer model, which is not model serializer. So the difference between model serializer and normal serializers, right? Normal serializer works strictly with you can customize it directly, right? When you serializer or serializer, and there's model, there's serializer. Because I'm working strictly in model, it pays attention to the model field. So any model field you pass in here must match with what you want to, except is a read-only. When you're collecting data from the user and you want to use model, it has to strictly work with the model you have. So that was I'll forget I was using model. So that's why it doesn't work, right? So the law of validation, on that one I wanted to show you here was this, for instance, and this created. You can see we added a new field here, but this new field, I defined it. This new field is this, it works as a read-only. Meaning, all it's doing is the original data that is here, it can now augment and track number of days in the DB. So for instance, I can get the number of days and return it and it's whatever I need to do. I can validate. So one unique thing about validation is you can decide to validate all your data. You can decide to validate one data. just like we see here for names. Say that if the spam is this, you can have different hierarchy of validation here. This validation is for the whole level. Just validate. So you can validate everything in one piece. But if you want to do a specific validation on the character or one of the field, you can do that here. For instance, if I say this name, I only want it to collect, I don't want it to collect numbers, just alphabet, right? What that means is, I don't want it to collect, when you collect numbers, just tell you, sorry, this field is invalid. I'll give, for instance, if you raise an error, right? If type, I'll give for, if I can say, if the type of this data, right, is not a string, for instance, I can tell it, if this time name will be a string, for instance. If I do this, for instance, now, what this implies is, let me reload my page here. What this implies right now is the fact that if I put a number, so let me ask a question. Is this, if I put 1,000 here, is this a string or a number? Let me see where we can get this. Is this a string or a number?
It is a string.
Oh, great. Yeah, so 1,000 without a string right now. So when it says, somebody feels like you want to hack your system and put number. Now, if you block it and tell you, oh, you entered, let me see why you entered, because I'm supposed to validate it. Let me see if I added to the right place. It's supposed to block it and tell you that no, if I use the right validation. This shouldn't work. Let me see why. It's supposed to validate and stop it and tell me. Let me be sure. So I can know why this happened here. Let me print out. Let me print the value. And then let me go again. So now let me go again. Can you see what came in here as value here is name? Now if I want to print the type, now let me print the type of name that came in. The type of this guy, right? It's going to tell me the string. So this is a string. Let me go back now and type so I can know why that first one didn't work. Now this is a string. Now we can tell why this guy is a string, despite the fact I've told it what to expect. Can anyone help? Hello? Hello, can anyone help me here? Can anyone help to help me identify why this string was not being captured? Okay, all right. So anyone wants to help if I show you why? Okay. So so I'm going to explain why it's accepting that. And it's accepting that because the data already defined it to be a string, and from the documentation, right? From documentation, right, I already defined that the schema to receive a string. So when automatically the schema already knows that it's expecting a string. So if I try to pass in, it kind of converts it. Converts to a string before saving to the DB, right? So, but let me try and change what I configured here and see the difference here. Model change with int your fields, and then remove this. Then I come to serializer, and if that is a string, you say more than int, right? And let me try. Yeah. So validations, any form of validation I want to do, I could do it on this level, either on the individual text. I want to do currency validation. I'm expecting an integer. I don't want a float. For instance, I can say, if you pass me any variable, I can say, no, it's supposed to be an integer or it's supposed to be a float, or you're passing date number and they pass the date in the wrong format. You can validate it on this level, right? Yeah. Secondly, I mentioned that there are different types of validation, right? Which exist, right? There are different types of validation which exist, and let me try and show you here. That different validation that exists. We have the normal model view validator. We have the custom, which serializers, the serializer, whereby you can define your own field yourself, right? And it's not a model. You define those serializers yourself, rather than using the generic one. You can customize your own serializer, and that place you use serializer, not model view serializer. So in that case, you can manipulate the date, everything you want to do directly without having any issues, right? When you're working on your data. So you can check more of that when it comes to serializer, the different types of serializers can have. And then by default too, it supports different serializer fields, making it easier. Meaning, rather than saying, making an email field and then writing your own logic to say, check if it has a dot, if you follow the pattern of an email, it has a heart, it has a domain. Once you use an email field to validate, automatically Django already has that function inside this method. So it automatically validates those fields for you without you having to start manually checking, is it Gmail domain, the domain valid, you're checking the @ sign, it does that. And there are so many serializer fields that exist, so many serializer fields that exist, so many of them, right? And there's a char serializer field, right? That exists. There's an email field, a lot. There's a slug, right? Automatically, if you want to create a slug, you don't need to work on slug. There's URL. The UUID, like UUID, all those unique fields that you use for identifier rather than a normal ID. There's 5 parts. So the IP address also, right? Maybe you want to collect IP addresses. Rather than you checking the validation, is it correct? You can leverage on this, which you check is IP4, the latest one, IV6, right? There's numeric, excuse me, where you can just check. For instance, now you are working on a value and you're trying to check how much our system, minimum we can send to our system is 5K, maximum is 1 million. You can use this to set it, right? And for each variable you use, right, you don't need to cram what it does, for instance. You don't need to cram what it does. All you need to do is input amount, right? Dot input integer. Good. I can over on it, right? So over on it, it's not sure it's not showing me the property. So I have to install an extension. You can check out the property of this imp to know what it expects. Or when you open, for instance, the bracket, you can check out what you expect. Some take the maximum, minimum value, right? You can see all the properties. So you want to set maximum value and say, okay, we don't do less than 5K. We do from 5,000 to 10,000. You can set that here. So by default, before they even touch your model, it will solve that. Now I'll be moving on to the view, which is the core logic, where you write your core functions. This is where you write your core functions activity. Having validated the input that the user has sent, you now need to do the activity that is needed. This is where you write it. This is where you tell the system, I want it to be a post API, get API, patch API, update API, and all that, right? This is where you do that. And there are different ways of writing model views, writing API views. Just like we saw in the serializer, right? We have our model, right? We also have the model view set. What does model view set do for you? Model view sets by default, just by writing this short code, 3 lines, you built a CRUD API already, right? I know, does everyone know what the full meaning of CRUD? I know they must have mentioned in your class. Anyone? CRUD. Anyone? Yeah, okay, yeah, Emmanuel.
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
Okay, yeah, asking about, Immaculate, you can go ahead. I was asking about CRUD, the full meaning of CRUD. Immaculate, yeah.
The full meaning of CRUD.
Yeah.
Create, read, update, delete.
Okay, yeah, so they call it read, or some call it retrieve, right? They update and delete. Now, one thing I would like to show you guys, if you guys don't know this already, is that when it comes to updates in Django, right, there are 2 types of updates. Does anybody know? Anybody? Yeah, Dev. Yeah, Dev. Yeah, Dev, you can speak. Yeah, yeah.
Partial update or full update?
Yeah, exactly. Partial update, which in Django we call it patch. Full update is called put. Right? Because you need to know all this. Yeah. Does anyone know the difference between both of them? What's the difference between patch, partial update, and full update? Anyone? Anyone want to help me?
Well, I want to try.
Okay, say I'm listening to you.
Well, a partial update is when a partial update of a model is just when we want to modify, we want to of some attributes. But the full update is resetting all the attributes of the model.
Okay, yes, okay. Any other person to add something to that? Yeah, Nadine, over to you.
Okay, the difference between put and patch.
Yeah.
What I know, put, you press the entire resource, like the entire thing, and patch particularly update the specific field.
Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that. So yeah, so just to interpret what Nadine said, in addition to that, right, partial update specific field, meaning if I have, just like I talked about, I have this 3 amount. If I use put API, right? Now let me give the difference in both. So if this, remember that this model takes in 3 fields: amount, backend expected amount, this. If I remove this, right, which of them will work for? If I remove one field, if I use a put, it will not work. It will tell you one field is missing. So for put, you must update every field in it. For patch, I can decide to say I want to update just amount and I'll remove everything. So I say, oh, the only amount I want to be updating for this API. So that model, if the model takes in 3 fields, and you use put, you must update those 3 fields at the same time. If you use patch, it means that you can update any of the fields, and the other ones, and you update. Now, the mistake most some people make is, even though you're using patch, if, for instance, you've already collected amount and you put this place as empty, and you say you're using patch, it's going to update this with empty string. So you should know that. So in as much as you're using patch, you know that you need to be careful. You use patch, only send the field you are updating. The other fields you're not necessarily updating. You need to actually remove them, except you have an extra validation in your backend that says, okay, if this guy is an empty string, you ignore it, you don't update it to my DB. By default, once you send the patch command, you must remove the field that you don't need. But for put, you put everything. So some people in the backend, front end, what they do is they will maintain the old state and pass it in, and they allow you to edit and put the last. So even if you are putting everything, if still what was there before is add updating to your DB. So so this is one of the things. And when it comes to the views, that's one important. That's where you can set how you want your views to be, right? And like I said, if you use model view set automatically, it will create the CRUD API for you, just like you can see here. If I come here, right? If I collapse all this, you can see all the items. You can see items created, except for these last 2. You can see it created everything. And one thing it does by default, to create a patch for you, it will create a put for you. And when you want to patch, it asks you for an ID. ID by default is the ID on the DB. Remember that when I created the items, I had an ID. So that ID used to update the field. So by default, Django will give you, by default, create this. So it makes your life easy if you're building a simple application. But there are cases whereby only admin can create. You don't want, maybe I'll build an API right now for a third party. So give for it and see the one I created here. You only want them to see this. You don't want them to see the post. What do you do in that case? You can decide to change this view set. Now, let's go back to documentation. Right, I'll go ahead. Django has view set here. Has, like I told you about that, they have different views set. There's a model view set, right? Model view set returns everything, right? There is, see, by default, this all view set does. Return everything you want and create it automatically. That's how Django does that for you. However, there are other types of validations, like other types of view set that you can do, right? There's generic view set, there's model view sets. Inherit this and includes all, it includes all this for you, right? Now, there are other types. See this one, read-only view set, meaning it only returns list and view. So let me try it, for instance. I can decide to say, I don't want to create anything because, okay, I did it here. I don't want to create anything. I only want this item because I'm going to manually creating the item on myself. So APIs should not have create. All I need to do is use view set. When I use view set with the same code base, what it does for me is, note, it will return the view set, and this is it. Get request for you, because view set only does get and list. So if you notice, most times you're only going to see 2 gets. The get here without the ID means get a list. You can see the list. But if there's an ID, it will get specific one for you, right? So when you change it to list only, to return the single list and the individual, and then the individual get by default. Now, are there other ways of, the other way? There's something called mixing. So let's say you have specific things you want to list. I only want to create and list. You can just use a mixing and set it by default. That's the job of Django again, right? You create a list this and create this. See the custom. Let me show you that custom. You can see the custom now. I only have create and list. Now you can see I didn't tell you I needed the get for individual. I just said I need list and get, and I created it here. So this helps you not to expose APIs you don't need. If, for instance, you don't want people to post into items, you don't need to have that in your documentation. right? So that's why you have the control. Django gives that control to say what you want, so your documentation is clean. Because if I'm an hacker and I check your documentation, because documentation is always exposed to people, and I give you access to creating this, I can be populating your system and I'll mess it up. So as a backend, you need to just allow what you want and don't make so your system does not break, right? That one, yeah, I think I spent a lot of time, but that's one of the things you need to know. Second thing I would like to talk about when it comes to view is there's something called actions. That's another way of writing views, APIs, right? Custom APIs. So if I want to create an API for instance, I can start use action. Action means I can tell you that I'm creating an API, call it recent. Now, what method do I want? I want it to do what? Be a GET request. What that means is the model of this, which is inside the URLs, this URL that has the base URL of items. As you can see, items. I am telling you that please, I need to create a custom API called recent. And it needs to be a GET request. That's what this means. If I change it to post now, change it to post and I reload, right? If I come back to this place, sorry. What just broke now? Amount. Why did I? Hey, I've touched my serializer. I put something somewhere. Amount. Where did I declare amount? Okay. Amount. Sorry. Yeah, that's why it's breaking. So if I come here now, you can see where is it? Recent now has turned to a post request. Right. If I want it to be a patch request, for instance, where am I? Under view. All I need to do is just say put. When it loads, it turns to a put request. So this way you can just simply, if you don't want to, because Django is a bit bulky. So if you just want to do something simple, you don't want it to. Now, why did I put this under display? Because I want to just create a custom API to do something custom. I want to get the recent list of items. Django by default will not give you that. If you do list, it might not give you. I want to just get the top 5. List to give you everything, but I need a small one that just give me the recent top 5 alone. I can just create a small custom API here. Then ask it to use the serializer. So this serializer can help you in, like I said, for validation of data input and data you give out. So the data you're receiving and data you want to return back to the user, you use serializer to manage that. So this is what returns. Okay, I've gotten the items now. What fields do I want to return out to the user? That's where return ID, this and this. That's why when you go to, let me go back again and change it to the get method so it's easier. So that's why when I go to the get recent and I say retry and I release. Yeah, I made a mistake. Integer. So let me go back to the model and change it back to what it's supposed to be. Yeah. So can you see? It returns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let me go and list. Let me go back to the full list API that I built that is here. How many does it have? Can you see it has 7? But this returns what? 5. And let's see what I did with the latest 5. Because that's what I designed it to do. Recent means latest 5 because filtering by order. Yeah, this is some SQL query. Rather I write SQL query. This means get the data, order it by the latest, and then I need just the first 5. That's what this line does. Now, what data should I return? You can see now it's returning 3 things. If I wanted to not return the date, I don't want it to return ID. All right, all I need to do is to go to this serializer I created here. Tell it, please remove ID from this field. When I come back here and I list here, and come back here and say recent, right? You can see that I removed the ID. So serializer does input and output validation, and simple by doing what? The fields. No, this field are the fields that's supposed to be my DB. Except if I create a custom field and then tell it pass something to it. So that's one thing about actions. You set the details to be first, you put the method, right? And then there are also other properties that they can put, serializer class, for instance, to tell it which serializer it should return from if I don't want to do this. Right. So one of the things you explore is check out action. Look, one of the things the way I do when I'm coding, for instance, is I check the properties of each of those methods and check how does it work. Yeah, how does it work? For instance, now if I go to see the action I just talked about now, right? Actions. So I can search for actions and then see the details property actions has. Okay, can you see? The documentation allows you to override this permission, this and this. Meaning, for instance, if all this API, this class, I want the API to be authenticated, and but I want this one not to be authenticated. I can come here and just put permission class, right? Permission class, and then it's authenticated, right? Yeah, I did not import, sorry. I didn't import it authenticated. Yes, so let me remove this in that way. So let me go back to this API documentation and let me list. Can you see what it told me? This API is only calling authenticated. But if I go and call the list API I have here, it will list it. But because I went personally on this particular API, I said, if they're not authenticated, do not allow them use it. So it affected just only this function, this API, not everybody, right? So that's the joy of Django. You can customize to the barest minimum, right? And it gives you that flexibility. You might not know all this from the first day, but as you read documentations, you see the property it has, you know how to use it. Yeah, so I'll be stopping here while taking questions from everybody and getting feedback. Any questions from anyone? Any question for anyone? Questions? So, questions? So, yeah, see, for instance, let me just show you. I didn't show you guys this. I did something called highlight. You can see how I customize the response I want. Right? I customize the response I want. Highlight means I told it, okay, once you, now, see the beauty of what I did now. This highlight, I told it to take in ID. That's what PK means. Receive ID from the user. That's why it has an implicit ID. All I need to do was to tell it to receive PK. And then what does it do? Take that PK, use it to get the object. And then PK like a keyword in Django. So primary key. Then when you use it, it gets the object and then checks it and returns whatever I want it to return. So these are where I do use, that's how you just customize the view. So with this, you write your model, which you've been taught. Use your serializer to validate your data, both input and output data. Use view to write your logic, your core logic, your controller for those that do other languages, right? And then the URL returns the data out. Yeah, so I'll be stopping here for today. Once again, any questions, anything that's confusing, this is the time for us to ask questions before we call it night. Anyone? Yeah, Dev.
Yeah, maybe you've done it at the beginning of the session, but I was expecting you to give us some walkthrough from where we left last week. That is building the whole application. I mean, the monolithic part of it with the views and class-based views to integrating now Django REST Framework and so on.
Oh,
I just found out the whole application and everything is already in there. I was kind of lost.
okay. Yeah, so that's what I'm asking. So initially, before you joined the call, I tried to ask how the last class was. Where did you stop, right? And I didn't get a response, right? But when I asked how last week was and all that. So based on what I understand right now, you're saying that your last class you had last week, you're supposed to have talked about models. Am I correct? No, mute. Like, I want to know, so I'm not confusing.
Okay, yes.
Okay. So you covered models very well, yes, last week, right? How model works.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this
Yeah.
week, yeah. So when I started initially, for those, sorry, time I have to take it back. Did you join the class when I talked about this?
You were talking about that.
Okay, good. So, but I've drawn this before you joined the class, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just do a quick recap. So, when you're building an application, for instance, REST framework is primarily for building. I tried to explain that. Did they introduce REST framework to you guys in last class? Django REST framework.
No, just the topic. I mean, they said we were going to see Django
Yeah,
REST
so that's
Framework.
what I want. So that's what I want. That's what we wanted you guys to first go through. That's how we share the resources for the week, so you guys can understand REST framework. The class is not to introduce you to it. One, it's just to explain what you've read from the document. So please, I will try and explain the REST framework. Please, going forward, to go into those documents, watch the videos. Google Django REST framework is a framework for building backend applications, right? Especially server-side backend APIs. Let me put that way, right? And how do you build API? What are APIs? Where you connect? There are different types of APIs. Some days REST, right? I don't know if do you guys are you conversant with the APIs? Do you know about REST APIs? I want other guys to also give me their thumbs up. Do people understand the different types of APIs we have? Guys, I need response. So I know if I understand, I don't kind of go too far, or I want to understand everyone. We're on the same page, guys. So when front end connects to the back end, they use a channel, right? And this channel could be in different ways, right? Can be in different, and they use what we call APIs, right? Application Program Interface, right, for you to communicate. And there are different ways of communication, right? There's REST framework, right? There's REST framework. We have we have REST framework. We have a lot of them. gRPC. We have gRPC. We have SOAP. We have XML. A lot of banks use XML for communication. You have other protocols people use to communicate to themselves. But REST framework is focused on REST, like see the word REST, right? And it helps you in building that communication. And it works on this architecture, the models, your database, your views where you write your core logic, serializer where you validate data, and your URLs where you tell it the route to. Which route should you access to get access to the core logic you're writing, right? So, and that's why the last class they talked about models. So you can understand models, how you store your data, set your data. I want to collect financial data, I want to collect this. You set it here. Now, that's why I started by the serializer. Serializer is what you use to validate it, to serialize your data. So when there's a request from the front end to the back end, most of the time, this is how it looks like. This is an API. At then you are telling them that they said they need all the items in the system. For this particular API, for instance, you get requests. They're not passing anything to you. They're just retrieving data to them. For a post request, they'll tell you what they want. Now, that's where you now validate the data. Okay, these are the data. These are the data in this you pass. You give them instruction on what data you need, and they send it to you. And then you can use it to do whatever. When they send it to you, you can now check, are they sending the right data I'm expecting? I want money to be string. Are they sending? Don't need to be integer or float. What are they sending? This is like the gatekeeper. And you do that to the serializers method I've listed today. Once you've done that, the views take it over. That's why if you check the views, there's something called serializer, meaning when somebody calls the API, it first goes through this serializer before it even have access to do any other thing. That's the sense of having a serializer class. That's why this is the gatekeeper. This is serializer. This is what you use to validate any API call from this class. And I talked about the fact that different API views and all that. So that's the whole essence of the model, the views and the serializer. You can also read more about it and ask questions also in the chat. I don't know if that makes sense, Dave. All right, great. Any other question from anyone? I think that was confusing. All right. If there's no other questions for today, I think we'll call it a night. Thank you all for making it to the class today. I really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks so much. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I think also during the course of the week, we also try to drop questions on feedback form so that you guys can rate the program so far and give your anonymous recommendations on the classes so that one can work on it against subsequent programs. So having said that, thank you guys once again for the class and you have a great day and evening.